Your world will end. My globs of doom will reign over your world and take control. Ah!
Good voice!
SpongeBob, are you okay?
I think so.
Follow me. I have something to show you. Ooh, sorry. I don't know what I was thinking.
What's that?
It looks like a giant robot.
That's the vessel of Portentia. There are 4 pieces missing. If you collect them and get this thing working, you could stop the Morphoids.
He's as crazy as a coconut, but I like how he's thinking.
Come on then. We've got a robot to build.
I really need to get back now. About time. I almost perished from boredom.
These slide sections are inherently surreal, so seeing the Invader Zim aesthetic in them it just fits. It just makes perfect sense for this interdimensional travel tube nonsense. I do like the platforming and these little slide sections. It's not difficult, but it's satisfying. Guess you could say that about the game as a whole, though whether the combat in the game is satisfying, I think that's really questionable, because I've grown to enjoy it simply by playing the game so much, but I don't think most people would find the combat satisfying. I think these interdimensional slide segments are satisfying because, it's like baby's first endless runner. Hey, there's the school over there. And I quite like endless runners, at least ones that are done well and have a pleasant aesthetic to them, and this has a very pleasant aesthetic to it, as well as very pleasant music.
Taco.
Grr! Unhand that taco! We need it.
He's under the control of the Morphoids.
You know, I've always wanted to say this.
Attack!
I really appreciate the cartoonish detail in making Dib's eye twitch like that, but also it looks like it's about to pop, and considering he's from Invader Zim, I kind of expected that was going to happen. Anyway, I really like the music here, and I also really like what they did for Zim's school. It looks quite nice. It actually looks like the school from the show, and they translated the art style pretty well. I can't think of any other game where you can platform around Zim's school. You know, a torn-up version of Zim's school, where there's orange goo everywhere. And the music, again, is very nice, so I quite appreciate this level for its environment, as I do most of the levels in this game. We are currently playing as Technus, and as I already said, most of the special attacks are the same. Technus' special attack freezes the enemies in place so we can kill them in one hit. Technus is my favorite Danny Phantom villain. I know he was a bit of a minor recurring villain, but he went under some major character development. Became much more competent as a villain over the course of the show. And I like the character traits he displayed that none of the other characters did, such as his hatred of emotions, even though that was barely touched on. But yeah, he's fun. He's a fun villain, and I like playing as him whenever I get the chance. His voice is really goofy, though. I believe it's the same voice actor as Danny's dad. And I know he's a really famous voice actor, but fuck me, I can't remember the name. It's not important. I love the fucking militaristic drum beat in this song. It's really out there. Anyway, this hopscotch doesn't do anything, I'm sorry to say. You don't get any secret Easter egg from playing hopscotch. I wish you did. There's another chalk game that you do get an Easter egg from later in the game. I hope I remember to show that off. Zim and Technus' team-up attack is just that the enemies turn into computers. I'm not sure what them turning into computers has to do with a plunger, but I'll take it. We're actually about to head under the school, which if I recall correctly, that appeared in an episode involving giant lice. Again, if I recall correctly. See, you can spend a while talking about the nice environments and music, but the game design doesn't exist. There's no game design here, outside of the bosses, but this isn't the bosses. There's no game design here. That's not what this is. Don't kid yourself. You know what's funny is I don't even think you'd need to change the environments at all. You just need to make the combat system not so bland. If you wanted to have actual game design, I mean. You know, some composers are like, 30-second loop that fits the atmosphere of the level ought to do. 1 minute loop maybe. But this composer's like, what if we had 5 separate songs inside one song? What if we just crammed 5 completely distinct songs inside of one track? What if we did that instead? And nobody stopped them, and I'm glad they didn't. Something I notice about these games is that independent of what everyone else is doing, the composers always seem to be having a fucking good time. And that's because I think the musical composition is so divorced from the rest of the game development process. Like, the composers are just here to set a mood. That's their job. It doesn't matter if your game lives up to the mood or whether the game is as good as the music. They're here to set a mood, and they're gonna do that. It doesn't matter how your game turns out. I really quite like this set piece of the destroyed town covered in goo and having to ride the buses through the goo as the monsters smash up the buildings. You can see the really unique Invader Zim architecture here as well, up close. Looks nice. So yeah, I quite like this set piece. It actually looks very good. You may notice some of the enemies have armor now. That doesn't mean anything. That just means we need to hit them more. That's all that means. That doesn't mean anything. If you were thinking like, hey, maybe I need to do something special to get the armor off. No, you just hit them more. That's all you do. I really love how utterly destroyed this city is. Like, it's completely fucking ruined. Most of the locations aren't this fucked up, but I guess this is the Invader Zim location, so it's understandable that this one would get more messed up. So you know what you do for this guy? You punch his legs, and then you punch his body when his body comes down. So close. It's so close to having game design in it. Not really. It's so bland. Experiencing this combat system right alongside, you know, Japanese beat-em-ups feels very weird. It's very strange. Let's rescue Dib's father and get out of here.
Thank you. I must get back to my lab and analyze this substance.
Alright, it's time for some fucking place in Zim's town. I don't know where we are, but that's not really important, is it? What's important is that, and the game broke. It may not be obvious right now, but Tech is sliding everywhere, and he's moonwalking. He has strafing activated. This happens sometimes when you switch characters. Strafing is not a game function. This is not supposed to happen. Your character is not supposed to have ice physics or strafe around like this. This is a glitch, and I find it to be quite humorous. This game is not without its glitches. There are many of them. Some sound glitches, some general audio glitches, and then there's just flat-out gameplay glitches like this one, where the character starts strafing and moonwalking for no apparent reason, and you can't really fix it. There's nothing you can do to fix this except wait for a cutscene. And even then, as you're about to see, sometimes cutscenes don't fix the issue. So you have to try and platform like this, which is thrilling. And I actually mean that because trying to platform like this is quite challenging. So, we just used Tack's special attack there. Tack's special attack is supposed to turn enemies into a sheep, but sometimes it turns them into a monster instead. So you have to defeat the monster, which can actually hurt you. And I think this is a reference to the cartoon, where Tak is generally incompetent. But the thing about that is that I hate the cartoon, so I don't appreciate this reference to it. You could say I actually quite despise the cartoon and what it did to the characters from the Tak license, because I love the Tak video games, and I think they're full of personality and character, and I think the cartoon utterly fucking ruined it. And I hate it. Like, Tak's whole thing is that he was just this normal guy who wasn't supposed to be the chosen one, and then he wound up saving the world anyway, because he was just so good at saving the world. And you know, not only does the cartoon not have any of that saving the world stuff, it's not an adventure cartoon in general, and they added extra characters that do nothing except be obnoxious. And the core idea behind Tak's character is missing, and they removed all the world building, all the interesting world building. So I hate the cartoon. I hate it a lot. It's awful. You know, why have interesting characters and humor when you can just have clear-cut cartoony bullshit that no one is interested in? There are some cartoons that people utterly despise that I would consider far more valuable than Tak because they were creative, they tried to be something interesting. Like Robot and Monster comes to mind. Robot and Monster didn't last a very long time. It was a very absurd comedy, but it was self-aware, and it had a very strong artistic direction. And I was a fan of it. I quite liked it. I would also consider Fanboy and Chum Chum to be more valuable than the Tak cartoon. Because while I understand a lot of people find Fanboy and Chum Chum to be utterly obnoxious, I actually quite like the self-referential humor in it, because it refused to take itself seriously, and it had a lot of recurring characters, like an obscene amount of recurring characters for the kind of gag-focused cartoon it was. Some of them actually got character development sometimes. Rarely, but sometimes. Fanboy and Chum Chum had a really dumb sense of humor that I like quite a lot, like their teacher goes away to get laser eye surgery. And you're like, okay, their teacher's going away to get laser eye surgery. But then he comes back and he has actual laser eyes, which he uses to battle the students with. And that's just fucking absurd, and I love it. There's also an episode where Fanboy discovers that there is a time between night and morning. Like, he goes to bed at exactly 10 p.m., but he finds out that Chum Chum has been awake from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and Fanboy dubs this time night morning, and he's so enamored with the idea that there is time between night and morning that he has to see what happens. And it just turns out that it's just Chum Chum doing chores the whole time. And I thought that was cute, because I could relate to that when I was a kid. I mean, I wasn't a kid when Fanboy and Chum Chum came out, but I was a kid once. And I too was disappointed with the fact that nothing special happened during night morning, except for Adult Swim and Inuyasha. Another gag I quite like from Fanboy and Chum Chum is there's this stereotypical nerdy comic book action figure guy character. And he's supposed to be selling his action figures because he's supposed to be running a store, but he never sells a single action figure because he's too attached to them. And he claims this is just because he can never find anyone worthy of purchasing them. And a palette swap of his 3D character model walks in the store and attempts to purchase one, and he still refuses to sell it. And I thought that was great. What makes it even better is that the palette swap of his character returns later as a recurring character. Like, I can't be the only person who finds these things enjoyable, right? I really, really wanted there to be a Fanboy and Chum Chum world in a Nicktoons game. I really, really wanted that, because the Fanboy and Chum Chum world is very consistently laid out, and I would love to visit my favorite locations from Fanboy and Chum Chum. You know? I know nobody else likes the show. I'm very aware that nobody else likes the show and wants it to be forgotten. I don't care what you want. Alright, I liked the show. It was one of the very few Nickelodeon shows to make me actually laugh outside of Jimmy Neutron. Is Fanboy and Chum Chum good? I don't fucking know. It's entirely humor-based, and humor is incredibly subjective. So unlike Jimmy Neutron, which has things going besides its humor, I can't tell you whether Fanboy Chum Chum is actually any good. I can just tell you I personally thought it was funny and enjoyed its sense of humor. It felt like the kind of observations that you would make as a kid, you know, like as a 10-year-old kid brought to life in absurdist format. Okay, so this boss is pretty cool. We have to make our way into Zim's house past his home defenses. And each time we have to make our way into his house, which is a total of 3 times, the home defenses get more and more severe. After we actually get inside Zim's house, we have to take down Gur. Gur unleashes minions, and then he attacks us directly, but after that he becomes vulnerable. And you know, it's not a great boss, it's not going to win any awards or anything like that, but it's serviceable. It's a nice break from the tedium of the rest of the combat. It looks nice. You have to actually pay attention to what you're doing. It has a good concept that fits well with the Zim universe. Like, the idea of dodging Zim's lawn defenses is actually really cute. Arguably much better than the actual boss fight against Gur. That electronic taco that Gur is keeping, it always reminds me of a Starkos from Beyond Good and Evil. I think it's the color palette. I think that's it. I might be misremembering what Starkos even looks like, but I remember them looking vaguely like something from Taco Bell. And that has a Taco Bell pattern. I don't know, I hope it's obvious why I enjoy this game, because even though the game design clearly isn't great, it's got a very thick atmosphere to it. It's got a very enjoyable, lively atmosphere that fits well with each of the worlds. I am getting wrecked. Like I said, there's clearly way too much respect and love for the license here for me to call this shovelware. It's just not fair to consider shit like this on par with actual shovelware that came out, because the gameplay part sucks. I can grant you that, but there's more here than the gameplay, and I think the non-gameplay elements make the game experience worth it. Now, it's probably better to experience in Let's Play format than it is to actually play it yourself, because it's so dull. Like I said, this is not a good game, but being able to walk around in the environments of each world, especially when the environments are done so well, I think that's great.
I love this show.
Hey! Do I have a sign on me that says Goo Sponge? What's happening? We've got it! The first piece of the vessel of... But it will not be enough to stop me from
Smothering your insignificant planet.
Hey! You will not imitate me!
His absorption of the goo is creating a wavelength with whoever's controlling the morphoids. It's speaking through him.
SpongeBob, snap out of it! Smell that Krabby Patty. Breathe it in, SpongeBob. Breathe it in.
Where am I?
It's where we're going that's important. Amity Park. The second piece of the Vessel of Portentia has got to be there somewhere.